In the heart of the untamed American frontier, where vast prairies stretched endlessly and dense forests whispered secrets to the wind, three sisters found themselves caught in a cruel twist of fate. Eleanor, the eldest, was a woman of quiet strength, her eyes reflecting both wisdom and weariness. Margaret, the middle sister, possessed a sharp mind and nimble hands, always finding ways to make do with what little they had. Abigail, the youngest, carried an innocence that seemed almost out of place in such a harsh land, her laughter once bright but now subdued by hardship. Together they had left their home months ago, lured by promises made by men who claimed to love them, promises of safety, prosperity, and a new beginning. Their husbands, settlers hungry for land and riches, had painted vivid pictures of a future filled with comfort and happiness. They spoke of fertile fields, sturdy cabins, and endless opportunities. The sisters, eager to escape the confines of their old lives, trusted these men completely. But as the journey westward unfolded, the sisters began to notice cracks in the yard facade. Their husbands grew distant, their tempers short, and their words sharp. What started as small slights turned into outright neglect. Meals were prepared hastily, chores went unnoticed, and affection dwindled until it vanished altogether. The breaking point came one cold morning when the group reached the edge of Lakota territory. The air was thick with tension as the husbands gathered around a flickering fire, their faces grim. Without warning, they announced their decision. The sisters would be left behind. "You're slowing us down," one of them said, his voice devoid of emotion. "We can't risk our lives for you." The words hit like a hammer, leaving the sisters stunned and speechless. Eleanor tried to reason with them, pleading for compassion, but her appeals fell on deaf ears. Margaret clutched Abigail's hand tightly, trying to shield her from the harsh reality unfolding before them. Within moments, the men mounted their horses and rode off, disappearing into the horizon without so much as a backward glance. Alone and abandoned, the sisters stood rooted to the spot, their minds struggling to comprehend what had just happened. The weight of their situation pressed down on them like a storm cloud ready to burst. They had no food, no shelter, and no idea how to navigate the unforgiving wilderness surrounding them. Fear gripped their hearts, but beneath it lay a spark of determination, a refusal to give up. Eleanor, ever the protector, took charge. "We'll survive this," she said firmly, her voice steady despite the tremor inside her. "We have each other." The first few days were a blur of exhaustion and desperation. Hunger gnawed at their stomachs relentlessly, forcing them to scavenge for anything edible. Margaret used her resourcefulness to fashion makeshift tools from fallen branches, while Abigail searched tirelessly for berries and roots. Nights were the hardest. The temperature dropped sharply, and the darkness seemed alive with unseen threats. Every rustle of leaves or snap of twigs sent shivers down their spines. They huddled together for warmth, whispering words of encouragement to keep despair at bay. Despite their efforts, survival proved to be a daunting challenge. The forest offered little mercy, its beauty masking the dangers hidden within. One afternoon, as Margaret knelt by a stream filling a makeshift container with water, she noticed movement in the trees. Her heart raced as she froze, unsure whether to call out to her sisters or remain silent. Slowly, a figure emerged, a deer, its large eyes wide with curiosity. Relief washed over Margaret, but it was short-lived. The encounter reminded her of how vulnerable they truly were. Even the smallest misstep could mean disaster. Eleanor, meanwhile, wrestled with guilt and anger. She blamed herself for not seeing the signs earlier, for trusting too easily. But more than anything, she felt rage toward the men who had betrayed them. How could they abandon their own wives, leaving them to fend for themselves in such a hostile environment? Yet beneath the anger simmered a fierce resolve. She vowed to protect her sisters at all costs, to ensure that they made it through this ordeal no matter what. It was a promise she whispered to herself under the cover of night, a mantra that kept her going when doubt threatened to consume her. Abigail, though the youngest, showed remarkable resilience. Her cheerful spirit, though dimmed, refused to be extinguished entirely. She sang softly to herself as she worked, her voice carrying melodies from their childhood. At times, her songs drew smiles from her sisters, brief moments of light in an otherwise dark existence. But even Abigail couldn't escape the toll their situation took on her. Her cheeks grew hollow, her steps slower, and her laughter less frequent. Still, she clung to hope, believing that somehow things would get better. On the 5th day, just as despair began to creep into their weary hearts, something unexpected happened. As they rested beneath the shade of a towering oak tree, they heard the distant sound of hoofbeats. Panic surged through them, and they scrambled to hide behind thick bushes. Peering cautiously through the foliage, they saw a group of riders approaching. Their clothing was unlike anything the sisters had seen before. Vibrant colors adorned with intricate beadwork, feathers swaying gently in the breeze. The riders moved with purpose, their presence commanding yet strangely calming. For a moment, the sisters debated whether to reveal themselves or stay hidden. Fear of the unknown warred with the desperate need for help. Finally, Eleanor made the decision. Summoning every ounce of courage she possessed, she stepped forward, raising an open palm in a gesture of peace. The riders slowed their horses, studying her with cautious curiosity. One of them, a tall man with a dignified bearing, dismounted and approached slowly. His gaze was steady, his expression unreadable but not unkind. He spoke in broken English, his voice low and measured. "Who are you?" he asked. "Why are you here?" Eleanor hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. But the sincerity in his tone reassured her, and she began to explain their plight. Tears streamed down her face as she recounted the betrayal they had suffered, the abandonment and their struggle to survive. Margaret and Abigail joined her, their voices trembling but resolute. The man listened intently, his companions exchanging glances but remaining silent. When Eleanor finished speaking, there was a long pause. Then the man nodded. "We will help you," he said simply. Relief flooded through the sisters, so overwhelming that they nearly collapsed. For the first time since their abandonment, they allowed themselves to believe that salvation might be possible. The man introduced himself as Chaska, explaining that he and his fellow warriors belonged to the Lakota tribe. Though wary of outsiders, especially those associated with settlers, they recognized the sisters' vulnerability and chose to offer aid. With a gesture, Chaska signaled for them to follow. As they walked alongside the warriors, the sisters couldn't help but marvel at the stark contrast between their dire circumstances and the evident strength and unity of the Lakota. The riders, moved with grace and confidence, their connection to the land palpable. For the first time in days, the sisters felt a glimmer of safety, however fragile it might be. Little did they know, this chance encounter would change the course of their lives forever, leading them down a path they could never have imagined. The journey to the Lakota village was both awe-inspiring and nerve-wracking for the sisters. As they followed Chaska and his companions, they marveled at the vastness of the land around them. Rolling hills gave way to dense forests, where sunlight filtered through the canopy in golden beams. Birds chirped melodiously, and the distant sound of a stream provided a soothing backdrop to their trek. Yet, despite the beauty, fear lingered in their hearts. They were outsiders, strangers in a world that felt so different from anything they had ever known. Every glance exchanged between the warriors, every unfamiliar word spoken in hushed tones, made them wonder if they had made the right decision to trust these men. Chaska rode ahead, occasionally glancing back to ensure the sisters were keeping up. His demeanor was calm but watchful, as though he carried the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. Eleanor, walking alongside her sisters, couldn't help but study him. There was something about his quiet strength that intrigued her, though she pushed the thought aside, focusing instead on putting one foot in front of the other. Margaret, ever observant, noticed how the warriors moved with precision, their actions deliberate and coordinated. She wondered what kind of life they led, so far removed from the chaos and greed she had seen among settlers. Abigail, meanwhile, clung to her sister's hands, her wide eyes taking in everything around her. Though exhausted, she found herself fascinated by the rhythm of the horses' hooves and the colorful patterns on the warriors' clothing. After hours of walking, the group finally arrived at the Lakota village. Nestled in a valley surrounded by towering trees, the settlement was a sight to behold. Teepees stood tall, their exteriors adorned with intricate designs painted in earthy tones. Smoke curled lazily into the sky from small fires scattered throughout the area, and children played freely, their laughter echoing in the crisp air. The sisters hesitated at the edge of the village, unsure of what to expect. Chaska dismounted his horse and gestured for them to follow. As they stepped closer, the villagers stopped their activities to observe the newcomers. Some looked curious, others cautious, but none seemed hostile. A woman approached them, her face lined with age but warm with kindness. She spoke softly to Chaska in their native language before turning her attention to the sisters. Though they couldn't understand her words, her gestures were inviting, and her smile put them at ease. She led them to a teepee and motioned for them to sit. Within moments, food was brought, a stew made from wild game and herbs, accompanied by flatbreads baked over an open flame. The aroma was intoxicating, and the sisters realized just how famished they were. They ate slowly, savoring each bite, while the woman watched them with a gentle expression. Over the next few days, the sisters began to settle into their new surroundings, though it wasn't easy. Everything was foreign: the language, the customs, even the way people interacted with one another. The Lakota communicated not only with words but also with gestures, facial expressions, and shared silences. At first, the sisters struggled to keep up, often feeling lost and out of place. But the villagers were patient, offering guidance without judgment. Children taught them simple phrases in their language, giggling when pronunciation went awry. Elders demonstrated how to perform daily tasks, like grinding corn or tanning hides, with practiced ease. Eleanor took charge of learning as much as she could, determined to adapt quickly. She spent hours observing the women of the tribe, noting how they worked together seamlessly, supporting one another without hesitation. It was a stark contrast to the isolation she had experienced with her husband, who had treated her more like a burden than a partner. Here, community was everything, and everyone played a role in ensuring the group's survival. Eleanor found herself drawn to this sense of unity, yearning to contribute in any way she could. Margaret, with her sharp mind and quick hands, thrived in this environment. She discovered a talent for crafting tools and utensils, using materials provided by nature: wood, bone, and sinew. The Lakota admired her ingenuity, encouraging her to experiment with traditional techniques. One day, she sat beside an older woman who was weaving baskets from reeds. Watching intently, Margaret picked up a piece of discarded material and attempted to mimic the process. To her surprise, the basket took shape under her fingers, crude but functional. The woman smiled approvingly, patting Margaret's shoulder, in approval. It was a small moment, but it filled Margaret with pride, reminding her that she still had value, even in this unfamiliar world. Abigail, though timid at first, soon blossomed under the care of the Lakota children. They welcomed her with open arms, teaching her games and songs that transcended language barriers. Her laughter returned, brightening the atmosphere around her. She became especially close to a young girl named Winyan, whose infectious energy matched her own. Together they explored the edges of the village, collecting flowers and chasing butterflies. For Abigail, these moments were a balm to her wounded spirit, helping her forget the pain of abandonment and betrayal. As time passed, the sisters grew more comfortable in their new home. They learned to recognize the subtle cues that governed Lakota life, the way a nod could convey gratitude, or how a raised eyebrow signaled curiosity. They participated in daily chores, contributing what little they could. Eleanor helped gather firewood, Margaret repaired torn garments, and Abigail assisted in caring for younger children. Slowly but surely, they earned the respect and trust of the villagers, proving that they were willing to embrace this new way of life. Yet, beneath the surface, questions lingered. What would become of them? Would they remain here indefinitely, Or was this merely a temporary refuge? The sisters didn't voice these concerns aloud, but they weighed heavily on their minds. Eleanor, in particular, wrestled with conflicting emotions. On one hand, she felt grateful for the kindness shown to them. On the other, she couldn't shake the memory of being abandoned, not once, but twice now. Could she truly trust anyone? Again. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the village in hues of orange and purple, Chaska approached the sisters. He carried himself with quiet authority, yet there was a gentleness in his gaze that set him apart from the men they had known before. He spoke briefly, his words halting but sincere. Through gestures and broken English, he conveyed that the Council of Elders wished to meet with them. The sisters exchanged nervous glances, unsure of what to expect. Was this a test? A formality? Or perhaps something more significant? The meeting took place inside a larger teepee, its interior illuminated by the soft glow of a central fire. The elders sat in a circle, their faces weathered but wise. Chaska translated their questions, which focused on the sisters' origins and reasons for seeking refuge. Eleanor answered honestly, her voice steady despite the weight of scrutiny. When she finished speaking, there was a long pause. Then one of the elders nodded, murmuring something in their language. Chaska turned to the sisters and explained that they were welcome to stay as long as they needed. Relief washed over them, followed by a profound sense of gratitude. That night, as they lay side by side in the warmth of their borrowed teepee, the sisters reflected on how far they had come. From betrayal and despair to acceptance and hope, their journey had been nothing short of extraordinary. They knew challenges lay ahead, but for the first time in weeks they allowed themselves to dream of a future. Not one dictated by others, but one shaped by their own resilience and determination. Little did they know, this was only the beginning of a transformation that would change them forever. As the days turned into weeks, the sisters began to feel a sense of belonging they had never experienced before. The Lakota village was alive with activity, each person playing a vital role in the community's harmony. Eleanor, Margaret, and Abigail were no longer outsiders looking in. They were part of the rhythm that kept the settlement thriving. The initial awkwardness of learning new customs had faded, replaced by a growing confidence as they found their place among the tribe. Eleanor spent most of her time working alongside the women who gathered food and prepared meals. She admired their efficiency and teamwork, qualities she had rarely seen in her previous life. Every task was done with purpose, whether it was grinding corn, drying meat, or weaving baskets. At first, Eleanor struggled to keep up, her hands unaccustomed to the repetitive motions required for such work. But the women were patient, guiding her with gentle smiles and encouraging nods. Slowly, she began to master the skills, her movements becoming more fluid. What surprised her most was how much she enjoyed it. There was something deeply satisfying about contributing to the well-being of others, knowing that her efforts mattered. Margaret, meanwhile, found her niche in crafting tools and repairing items around the village. Her resourcefulness earned her praise from the men who worked on building and maintaining structures. One day, she noticed a young warrior struggling to mend a broken bow. Without hesitation, she approached him and offered her help. Using techniques she had learned during her childhood, she carefully repaired the weapon, ensuring it was strong enough for hunting. The warrior tested the bow and grinned, clearly impressed. From that moment on, Margaret became known as someone who could fix almost anything. It was a reputation she cherished, not because it brought attention, but because it gave her a sense of purpose. Abigail continued to spend her days with the children, forming bonds that went beyond language barriers. She loved teaching them songs. She remembered from her own childhood, clapping her hands and laughing as they mimicked her actions. In return, they taught her games passed down through generations, their laughter ringing out like music. Winyan, her closest friend, often took her on adventures outside the village, showing her hidden trails and secret spots where wildflowers bloomed. These excursions reminded Abigail of the freedom she had lost after marrying her cruel husband. Here, surrounded by nature and friendship, she felt like herself again, carefree and full of wonder. Despite their progress, The sisters couldn't ignore the lingering questions about their future. Though the Lakota had welcomed them warmly, they knew this arrangement might not last forever. Would they stay here permanently, or would they eventually need to leave? And if they did leave, where would they go? These uncertainties weighed on their minds, especially Eleanor's. As the eldest, she felt responsible for making decisions that would affect all three of them. But for now, she chose to focus on the present, finding comfort in the kindness of their hosts. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and violet, Chaska invited the sisters to join him by the communal fire. He had been observing them closely since their arrival, noting their determination and willingness to adapt. Tonight he wanted to share stories, tales of his people's history, their struggles, and their triumphs. The sisters listened intently, captivated by the vivid imagery in his words. Through these stories, they gained a deeper understanding of the Lakota way of life, their connection to the land, and their reverence for ancestors. Afterward, Chaska turned to Eleanor and spoke softly. "You are strong," he said, his voice steady. "Like the earth." Eleanor blushed at the compliment, unsure how to respond. She had always thought of herself as ordinary, merely doing what needed to be done. Yet, there was something in Chaska's gaze, a quiet admiration that made her heart skip a beat. She quickly looked away, focusing instead on the crackling fire. Margaret and Abigail also noticed changes in their relationships with members of the tribe. Margaret grew close to Tathanka, a skilled hunter who shared her curiosity for the natural world. They often discussed the best ways to track animals or identify medicinal plants, their conversations filled with mutual respect. Abigail, meanwhile, formed a bond with Wichasha, a young warrior known for his humor and playful spirit. He teased her gently, calling her "little bird" because of her cheerful demeanor. At first, Abigail was shy around him, but his kindness soon won her over. These connections weren't rushed or forced. They developed naturally over time. The sisters found themselves drawn to these individuals not just because of their personalities, but also because of the values they embodied: strength, wisdom, and compassion. For the first time, they understood what it meant to truly trust another person, to feel safe in their presence. Yet, as their friendships deepened, so did their awareness of the cultural differences between them. The Lakota had traditions that governed every aspect of life, from courtship to marriage. While the sisters appreciated these customs, they wondered if they would ever fully understand them. One night, as they sat together under a blanket of stars, Eleanor voiced her concerns. "Do you think we'll ever belong here completely?" she asked, her tone hesitant. Margaret shook her head. "I don't know," she admitted. "But maybe belonging isn't about being perfect. Maybe it's about trying." Abigail nodded, her eyes shining with hope. "They've already given us so much," she said softly. "Maybe we can give something back too." Her words stayed with them long after they drifted off to sleep, sparking thoughts of gratitude and responsibility. The following morning brought an unexpected challenge. A storm rolled in, dark clouds gathering ominously overhead. Thunder rumbled in the distance and flashes of lightning illuminated the horizon. The villagers sprang into action, securing teepees and bringing livestock closer to shelter. The sisters joined in, helping wherever they could. Eleanor worked tirelessly to reinforce the frames of the teepees, while Margaret used her knowledge of tools to repair damaged equipment. Abigail stayed close to the children, calming their fears with soothing words and songs. When the storm finally passed, leaving behind a fresh scent of rain and glistening leaves, the village came together to assess the damage. Miraculously, nothing serious had occurred thanks to everyone's quick thinking and cooperation. The sisters felt a surge of pride, knowing they had played a part in protecting their new home. It was in moments like these that they realized how much they had grown, not just as individuals but as a family united by resilience. That evening, as they sat around the fire once more, Chaska approached them with a thoughtful expression. He spoke briefly, explaining that the elders wished to honor their contributions to the village. The sisters exchanged surprised glances, unsure of what to expect. When the ceremony began, they were overwhelmed by the warmth and generosity shown. To them, songs were sung, prayers were offered, and gifts were exchanged. For the first time in a long while, the sisters felt truly seen, not as burdens or outsiders, but as valued members of a community. As the night wore on, Eleanor caught Chaska's eye across the fire. His gaze lingered on hers, filled with a quiet intensity that sent a shiver down her spine. Margaret noticed Tatanka watching her from afar, his smile soft yet meaningful. Abigail giggled as Wichasha playfully tossed a piece of bark her way, his laughter blending with hers. In that moment, surrounded by the people who had saved them, the sisters knew their lives had changed forever. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they faced them together, with courage, love, and the unwavering support of those who had become their second family. As the seasons changed, so did the lives of Eleanor, Margaret, and Abigail. The bond they shared with the Lakota tribe deepened, becoming as strong as the roots of the towering trees that surrounded the village. Each day brought new lessons, new connections, and a growing sense of purpose. Yet, beneath the surface of this newfound harmony, emotions stirred, emotions that neither the sisters nor their Lakota companions could ignore. Eleanor found herself spending more time with Chaska, often accompanying him on walks through the forest or sitting quietly by the fire in the evenings. At first, their conversations were simple, limited by language barriers and cultural differences. But over time, they discovered ways to bridge the gap. Chaska taught Eleanor the names of plants and animals in his language, pointing out their uses and significance. In return, Eleanor shared stories of her childhood, painting pictures of a world vastly different from the one she now inhabited. These exchanges created a quiet intimacy between them, one built not on words but on shared moments and mutual respect. One crisp autumn morning, as golden leaves swirled around them, Chaska stopped suddenly and turned to Eleanor. His expression was serious, his eyes searching hers. "You are brave," he said slowly, choosing his words carefully. "Like the eagle." Eleanor felt her cheeks flush, unsure how to respond. She had never thought of herself as brave, merely someone trying to survive. But there was something in Chaska's tone, a sincerity that made her heart race. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine what it might feel like to trust again, to let someone into her life without fear of betrayal. Margaret's relationship with Tatanka grew in a similar way, though their connection was rooted in curiosity rather than quiet reflection. They spent hours exploring the forest together, tracking deer or identifying herbs. Tatanka admired Margaret's sharp mind and resourcefulness, qualities he saw as rare and valuable. He often teased her about her endless questions, calling her the seeker in jest. Margaret laughed along, enjoying the playful banter. Yet behind the laughter lay a deeper understanding, a recognition of the strength they both possessed. One afternoon, as they sat by a stream, Tatanka handed Margaret a small carving he had made from a piece of wood. It was a bird in flight, its wings spread wide. Margaret held it gently, her fingers tracing the delicate lines. "For you," he said, his voice soft. Margaret looked up, meeting his gaze. There was no need for words. The gesture spoke volumes. She smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. In that moment, she realized she had found something she hadn't known she was missing, a partnership built on equality and mutual admiration. Abigail's friendship with Wichasha blossomed into something equally meaningful, though it took a different form. Their bond was lighthearted and joyful, filled with laughter and playfulness. Wichasha loved to make Abigail laugh, telling silly jokes or performing comical imitations of animals. Abigail, in turn, delighted in his antics, her giggles ringing out like bells. Yet, beneath the humor lay a tenderness that neither could deny. One evening, as they walked along the edge of the village, Wichasha picked a wildflower and tucked it behind Abigail's ear. "Little bird," he said with a grin, his eyes twinkling. Abigail blushed, feeling a warmth spread through her chest, For the first time since being abandoned, she felt cherished, not as a burden but as someone worthy of love. Despite these budding relationships, the sisters remained cautious. They had been hurt before, betrayed by men who had promised them safety and security. Trusting again felt like stepping onto thin ice, unsure if it would hold. But the Lakota warriors were different, not because they were perfect, but because they treated the sisters with kindness and respect. Slowly, the walls around their hearts began to crumble, replaced by hope and the possibility of something more. The turning point came during a harvest celebration held by the tribe. The entire village gathered to give thanks for the bounty of the land, sharing food, music, and dance. Fires burned brightly, casting flickering shadows on the teepees. Drums echoed through the night, their rhythm steady and hypnotic. The sisters watched in awe as dancers moved gracefully, their bodies swaying in time with the beat. Though they didn't fully understand the rituals, they felt the energy in the air, a palpable sense of unity and joy. When the dancing began, Eleanor hesitated, unsure if she should join. Chaska extended his hand, his smile warm and inviting. Taking a deep breath, she accepted, allowing him to lead her into the circle. As they danced, Eleanor felt a sense of freedom she hadn't experienced in years. Margaret and Tatanka followed suit, their movements synchronized as if guided by an invisible thread. Even Abigail, usually shy, found herself twirling alongside Wichasha, her laughter blending with the music. For the first time, the sisters felt truly alive, their spirits lifted by the celebration and the people who had embraced them. Afterward, as the festivities wound down, the elders called the sisters to a quiet corner of the gathering. Through gestures and broken English, they explained that the tribe wished to honor them further, not just as guests, but as potential members of their families. The suggestion was met with silence, the weight of the moment sinking in. Eleanor glanced at her sisters, seeing the same mixture of excitement and trepidation reflected in their eyes. This was more than an invitation. It was a chance to start anew, to build lives rooted in love and belonging. That night, as they lay side by side in their teepee, the sisters talked long into the darkness. Eleanor voiced her fears, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if we make the wrong choice?" she asked, her brow furrowed with worry. Margaret reached out, placing a reassuring hand on her arm. "We've already made choices," she reminded her. "We chose to survive, to adapt, to trust these people. Maybe it's time to choose happiness too." Abigail nodded, her voice soft but firm. "They've shown us what it means to be part of something bigger than ourselves," she said. "Isn't that worth taking a risk for?" Her words lingered, in the air, resonating deeply with her sisters. They knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would still be challenges, misunderstandings, and moments of doubt. But they also knew they weren't alone anymore. Together, they had faced the worst the world could throw at them, emerging stronger and more united than ever. When dawn broke, bathing the village in soft light, the sisters made their decision. They approached Chaska, Tatanka, and Wichasha, their hearts pounding with anticipation. With simple gestures and heartfelt smiles, they conveyed their willingness to move forward, to embrace not only the men who had captured their hearts, but also the culture that had saved them. The warriors' reactions were immediate and profound. Chaska clasped Eleanor's hands, his eyes shining with emotion. Tatanka placed a protective arm around Margaret's shoulders, while Wichasha pulled Abigail into a tight hug, lifting her off her feet in his excitement. In that moment, the sisters felt a sense of peace they hadn't known was possible. They had come a long way from the frightened, abandoned women they once were. Now they stood tall, ready to step into a future filled with promise and possibility. The Lakota tribe wasn't just their refuge. It was their home, their family, and their second chance at life. And as they prepared for the ceremonies that would formalize their unions, they knew they had found something far greater than survival. They had found belonging. The days leading up to the ceremonies were a whirlwind of activity, filled with preparations that brought the entire village together. The sisters, now fully embraced by the Lakota tribe, found themselves at the center of it all. Every task, no matter how small, carried meaning, a way to honor not only their upcoming unions but also the bond between two worlds. Eleanor, Margaret, and Abigail worked tirelessly alongside the women of the tribe, their hands busy with weaving, sewing, and decorating. Each stitch, each bead, told a story of resilience, hope, and unity. Eleanor's days were spent crafting a ceremonial dress under the guidance of an elder woman named Wiyaka. The garment was made from soft deerskin, its surface adorned with intricate patterns of porcupine quills and beads. Wiyaka explained that the design symbolized strength and courage, qualities she believed Eleanor embodied. As Eleanor worked, her mind wandered to Chaska. She thought about the quiet moments they had shared, the way he looked at her as if she were the most important person in the world. It wasn't just his words or actions that moved her. It was the unwavering support he offered, the sense that she could rely on him completely. For the first time in her life, Eleanor felt truly seen. Margaret, meanwhile, focused on creating tools and items for the household she would soon share with Thathanka. Her nimble fingers crafted a set of wooden bowls and spoons, each piece polished until it gleamed. She also wove a blanket using techniques she had learned from the tribe, incorporating colors that represented the earth and sky. Working alongside Thathanka during these preparations strengthened their connection even further. He often stopped by to check on her progress, offering suggestions or simply sitting quietly while she worked. Their conversations flowed easily now, blending laughter and shared dreams. Margaret realized that what she admired most about him wasn't just his skill or intelligence. It was his ability to listen, to truly understand her thoughts and feelings. Abigail threw herself into helping the children prepare for the celebration. She taught them songs and dances, her cheerful spirit infectious. In return, they adorned her with flowers and painted her face with bright colors, giggling as they transformed her into a vision of joy. Wichasha joined them often, his playful energy matching Abigail's perfectly. Together they turned simple tasks into games, turning work into fun. One afternoon, as they sat beneath a tree stringing beads for necklaces, Wichasha leaned over and whispered, "You make everything brighter." Abigail blushed, her heart skipping a beat. His words stayed with her long after the sun dipped below the horizon, filling her with warmth and happiness. As the big day approached, excitement buzzed through the village like wildfire. The air was thick with anticipation, and everyone played a role in ensuring the event would be nothing short of extraordinary. Typists were decorated with colorful banners and large fires were prepared for cooking and storytelling. Elders gathered herbs and medicines, ensuring the ceremonies would be blessed with good fortune. Children ran around, their laughter echoing through the crisp autumn air. Even the animals seemed to sense the importance of the occasion, staying close to the village as though they too wanted to witness the union of three cultures. On the morning of the ceremony, the sisters woke before dawn, their nerves tingling with a mix of excitement and nervousness. They bathed in a nearby stream, the cool water washing away any lingering doubts or fears. When they returned, the women of the tribe surrounded them, helping them dress in their ceremonial attire. Eleanor's dress shimmered in the early light, its patterns catching the sun like tiny jewels. Margaret wore a tunic embroidered with symbols of growth and prosperity, while Abigail donned a flowing skirt adorned with feathers and beads. Each outfit was unique, reflecting not only their individual personalities but also the journey that had led them here. The ceremony began at sunrise, with the entire village gathering in a large clearing. Drums pounded rhythmically, their beats steady and grounding. Smoke from sacred herbs rose into the sky, carrying prayers to the ancestors. The sisters stood side by side, holding hands tightly as they watched Chaska, Thathanka, and Wichasha approach. Dressed in regalia that showcased their roles as warriors and protectors, the men looked both proud and humbled, their eyes locked onto the sisters, filled with love and admiration. One by one, the couple stepped forward, guided by elders who spoke blessings in the Lakota language. Though the sisters didn't understand every word, the emotion behind them was clear. Each couple exchanged gifts, a symbol of their commitment to one another. Eleanor received a necklace made of eagle feathers, A token of Chaska's respect and devotion, Margaret accepted a carved stone figure representing balance and harmony, gifted by Tatanka. Abigail held a small pouch containing wildflower seeds, a reminder of Wichasha's promise to nurture her dreams. Afterward, the celebrations erupted into full swing. Music filled the air, and people danced with abandon, their movements fluid and joyful. Food was shared generously, and stories were told around roaring fires. The sisters found themselves swept up in the festivities, laughing and dancing alongside their new family. Eleanor twirled with Chaska, her feet moving instinctively to the rhythm of the drums. Margaret and Tatanka challenged each other to friendly competitions, their laughter ringing out above the crowd. Abigail clung to Wichasha's hand, her cheeks flushed with happiness as they spun in circles under the starlit sky. Throughout the night, the villagers showered the newlyweds with gifts and well wishes. Elders placed protective charms around their necks while children presented them with handmade trinkets. These gestures, though simple, carried immense weight, a testament to the tribe's acceptance and love. The sisters felt overwhelmed by the kindness shown to them, their hearts swelling with gratitude. They knew they had been given more than husbands. They had been welcomed into a community that valued them deeply. As the evening drew to a close, the couples retreated to their respective teepees, ready to begin their lives together. Inside, the atmosphere was calm and intimate, a stark contrast to the lively celebrations outside. Eleanor sat beside Chaska, her fingers tracing the edge of her feathered necklace. "I never imagined I'd find this kind of peace," she confessed, her voice soft. Chaska nodded, taking her hand in his. "You are home now," he replied, his words firm, yet gentle. Eleanor smiled, feeling a sense of contentment she hadn't known was possible. Margaret and Tatanka spent their first moments together discussing plans for the future. They envisioned building a sturdy structure near the forest where they could live comfortably while remaining close to nature. Margaret marveled at how seamlessly they communicated, their ideas blending effortlessly. "We're a team," she said, leaning against him. Tatanka chuckled, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Always." Abigail curled up beside Wichasha, her head resting on his chest as they gazed at the flickering firelight. "Do you think we'll have adventures like this every day?" she asked, her tone playful. Wichasha grinned, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Every single day," he promised. Abigail sighed happily, knowing she had finally found the happiness she had always dreamed of. Though their journeys had been fraught with hardship, the sisters now stood at the beginning of something beautiful. They had faced betrayal, fear, and uncertainty, only to emerge stronger and more united. The Lakota tribe had not only saved them, they had given them a second chance at life, teaching them the value of trust, love, and belonging. And as they drifted off to sleep, surrounded by the warmth of their new families, they knew they were exactly where they were meant to be. Months passed, and the sisters settled into their new lives with a sense of purpose they had never known before. Each day brought new challenges, but also new joys, as they continued to adapt to the Lakota way of life. Eleanor, Margaret, and Abigail were no longer outsiders looking in. They were integral parts of the community, contributing their skills and learning from those around them. Their marriages to Chaska, Tatanka, and Wichasha deepened with time, built on mutual respect, shared experiences, and an unspoken understanding that they had found something rare and precious. Eleanor's days were filled with leadership and responsibility. She worked closely with the women of the tribe, helping organize tasks like gathering food, preparing meals, and caring for the elderly. Her calm demeanor and natural ability to solve problems earned her the trust of the villagers. Chaska often joined her in these efforts, his quiet strength complementing her determination. Together, they became a force within the community, a couple whose partnership inspired others. When disputes arose or decisions needed to be made, people turned to them for guidance. Eleanor marveled at how much she had grown since her days as a frightened, abandoned woman. She now understood what it meant to lead with compassion and wisdom, qualities she saw reflected in Chaska every day. Margaret thrived in her role as a builder and innovator. With Thathanka by her side, she tackled projects that improved life in the village. They constructed sturdy shelters using techniques Margaret had learned from her husband, blending traditional Lakota methods with her own ingenuity. Margaret also introduced tools she had crafted herself, earning praise from hunters and gatherers alike. Her sharp mind and resourcefulness made her invaluable, and she took pride in knowing her work mattered. Thathanka admired her endlessly, often teasing her about her magic hands while secretly marveling at her creativity. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day, rooted in a shared love for discovery and improvement. Abigail blossomed into a beloved figure among the children and elders of the tribe. Her playful spirit and gentle nature made her a favorite, babysitter, storyteller, and confidant. Wichasha joked that she was turning into the heart of the village, always bringing laughter and light wherever she went. But beneath her cheerful exterior lay a depth of empathy that touched everyone she met. Whether comforting a crying child or listening to an elder's memories, Abigail approached each interaction with sincerity and kindness. Wichasha watched her with admiration, realizing he had married not just a joyful companion but someone who truly cared for others. Life wasn't without its challenges, of course. The sisters still faced moments of doubt, especially when reminders of their past surfaced unexpectedly. One evening, as Eleanor sat stitching a blanket, she overheard a group of settlers passing through the area. Their harsh voices carried through the trees, speaking of the Lakota with disdain and fear. Eleanor felt a pang of unease, remembering the cruelty of the men who had abandoned her and her sisters. She clenched her fists, anger rising in her chest. But then Chaska appeared beside her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We are stronger than their hatred," he said softly. His words reminded her of how far she had come and how much she had gained by embracing this new life. Margaret, too, encountered moments of tension, particularly when settlers encroached on Lakota lands. She witnessed firsthand the struggles her adopted family faced in protecting their territory and way of life. At times, the weight of these conflicts left her feeling powerless, but Thathanka taught her resilience, showing her how to stand firm in the face of adversity. "We do not fight out of anger," he explained one night as they sat by the fire. "We fight to protect what we love." Margaret nodded, drawing strength from his conviction. Slowly, she began to see herself not as a victim of circumstance, but as someone capable of making a difference. For Abigail, the hardest challenge came when news reached the village of skirmishes between settlers and neighboring tribes. The thought of violence terrified her, stirring memories of the fear and uncertainty she had felt during her abandonment. Wichasha noticed her distress and pulled her close, holding her until her trembling subsided. "You are safe here," he whispered, "and I will always protect you." His promise gave her courage, reminding her that she was no longer alone. With Wichasha's support, Abigail learned to face her fears head-on, finding solace in the knowledge that love could conquer even the darkest shadows. Despite these difficulties, the sisters found immense fulfillment in their roles within the tribe. They celebrated milestones together, births, harvests, and seasonal festivals, with joy and gratitude. They also mourned losses, leaning on one another during times of grief. Through it all, their bond remained unbreakable, a testament to the Iowa strength they had discovered in themselves and in each other. Years later, the story of the three bride sisters became legend within the Lakota tribe. Elders spoke of how adversity had transformed them from frightened women into pillars of strength and unity. The sisters' journey served as a reminder that humanity transcends borders, cultures, and prejudices. They had bridged two worlds, proving that love and resilience could overcome even the harshest trials. Their legacy extended beyond storytelling. Eleanor and Chaska raised children who embodied the best of both traditions, teaching them the importance of leadership and compassion. Margaret and Thathanka's offspring inherited their parents' ingenuity, becoming skilled builders and problem solvers. Abigail and Wichasha's family radiated warmth and kindness, spreading joy wherever they went. Together, the sisters, ensured that future generations would carry forward the values they had embraced, the values of community, trust, and hope. As they grew older, the sisters often gathered to reflect on their journey. Sitting beneath the stars, they marveled at how fate had led them to this place, to these people, and to the lives they had built together. Eleanor spoke of gratitude, Margaret of growth, and Abigail of love. Though their paths had been difficult, they agreed on one thing: they wouldn't change a single moment. Every hardship, every triumph, had shaped them into who they were meant to be. On a quiet winter evening, as snow blanketed the village in a soft white glow, the sisters stood side by side, gazing at the horizon. The land stretched endlessly before them, vast and untamed, yet somehow familiar. It was home, not because of its beauty, but because of the connections they had forged here. Eleanor smiled, her hand resting on Chaska's arm. Margaret leaned against Thathanka, her fingers intertwined with his. Abigail giggled as Wichasha playfully tugged her braid. In that moment, surrounded by the people they loved, they knew they had found something greater than survival. They had found belonging, and with it, a lifetime of happiness.